Hey there, everybody. Elise Enriquez here, Purpose and Productivity Coach, and I want to talk with you about awareness, self-awareness today. I'm going to tell a little story, and it's going to have a curse word in it, so I just need you to be prepared for that. I have a friend who has a bumper sticker that somebody made for him based on his own work that said, awareness is a bitch. And I can totally relate to that. I have experienced that feeling personally, as somebody who feels like I'm never going to be done. I'm always going to be growing. I always want to be learning, so I'm never going to be done. And that requires self-awareness in order to have growth, right? And so I can understand that feeling of when you get some good awareness about something about yourself, whether it's a helpful pattern or sometimes a pattern that hasn't always served you. The latter can be really frustrating, and it's just like, oh, I'm doing that thing again. Are you kidding me? And I often have seen my clients experience this as well, this feeling like, oh, awareness, so annoying, right? Because they wouldn't be hiring a coach like me if they didn't also want to grow. So that again requires awareness. And these things that we learn about ourselves can sometimes be frustrating. The patterns that we kind of get into over and over again can be hard to see and hard to take. A lot of those patterns, they're just overdone. There's actually a lot of good that comes from a lot of those patterns. It's just that sometimes we use those patterns inappropriately, or they're just not applied appropriately, or they're overdone. So there can be a lot of frustration with self-awareness. And the thing is that people, I'm going to use a little visual here, people often think that awareness leads to growth, that if I just work on that awareness piece, I'll get to growth. And that's true. Awareness does lead to growth. So let's keep going with awareness a little bit longer, even though I keep saying it's not enough, because I want to explain a little bit more about it. So as I said, self-awareness is critical to growth, and oftentimes personality assessments can be really helpful to foster that awareness, to kind of jumpstart or kickstart or fast forward some of that self-awareness. There's, the DISC out there, the color wheel, all those different kinds of assessments. My two personal favorites are the Myers-Briggs type indicator and the Enneagram. So I'm going to talk through those just a little bit so you can understand how I got to this journey of awareness not being enough. I've come to this conclusion that awareness is not enough. So with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, it's an assessment that helps you look at your preferences, your hardwired preferences in 4 different areas: where we direct our attention, where we get our energy, how we take in information, how we make decisions, and how we show up in the world. And that can be really useful information to help you navigate life, navigate relationships with others, etc. And I love this assessment because it is kind of like a fast forward button on fostering awareness in other people who maybe haven't done a lot of personal growth work or self-awareness work. So it's a great way to just like kickstart an engagement with someone. In fact, any new clients I work with on a monthly coaching basis go through the Myers-Briggs assessment. And it's interesting. What happens is when we identify somebody's type, there's 16 different types, we go through and look at this description for that type. And I'm always really excited for this part because we've kind of locked into a model, an idea of who they are in terms of a reference point, something that they can respond to and learn about themselves in a deeper way. And there's really amazing, cool information and just cool traits about each personality type, each of these 16 types. We need all of them in the world in order for our world to run well. And there's a lot to be celebrated at each one for each type. And there's, some drawbacks, there's some frustrations that come along with our own personality types, but there's a lot to be celebrated. And what's often interesting, even though there's an entire section of the assessment where we look at, what is great about you, people's response oftentimes to reviewing this kind of information about themselves, like, oh yeah, that sounds like me. And I was the same way. When I first did some of this work myself, the things that I uncovered, learned about myself, I kind of ignored the good stuff and just noticed the bad stuff. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like me. And it was really frustrating. So that kind of awareness was a bitch, quite frankly, right? So it took time for me to realize for myself, and then to start to realize it for others. I realized this before I became a coach, but that I needed to not just jump into that zone of being frustrated by aspects of my type. I also need to celebrate some of it too. And even for the parts that frustrated me, I needed to learn some sort of acceptance for myself, some self-acceptance to go along with my self-awareness. And I realized that was what I was doing for my clients. I wasn't just helping them become more aware of who they are and what some of their hardwiring is and some of the stuff that they're not really conscious of, some of the things that are happening and that they're doing that they're not as conscious of, but to also accept that, to just understand what that means for them. But it wasn't until I got exposed to the Enneagram, another personality assessment, where for me to really lock into that belief even more, to really come to that conclusion that awareness is not enough. So the Enneagram is a personality system that describes 9 fundamentally different ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. And these 9 types, these 9, perspectives were generated by somebody. We come from one perspective based on protecting some aspect of our personality through our development phase. And what I like about the Enneagram is that it talks about not putting you in a box by using these type descriptions, but describing the box that you're in so that you can get out of it. And my growth process led me to the Enneagram, and I did some study under Dr. David Daniels. And he created a model called the universal, or he co-developed a model called the universal growth process, also known as the 5 A's. And this is what finally helped me understand why awareness is a bitch, why awareness is not enough. So what his model shows us is that awareness is actually just the first step. So earlier I showed you my really high-tech diagram to say this is what we think happens. We go from awareness and we get growth. That's what happens, right? It's not actually what happens. So we'll zoom in a little bit, but awareness is just the first step. Then you have acceptance, appreciation, action, adherence, adherence, and then growth. The growth comes from action, okay? Awareness is just the first step. Let me share a little bit about the 5 A's model or the universal growth process model, more in Dr. David's terms, okay? So awareness, that's having a practice to increase your receptivity and presence. So meditation, any kind of presence exercises can be helpful for that, so that you can be aware of the things that you're feeling when you're feeling them, or aware of the reactions you might be having. So that's awareness. So the second A is acceptance. It's opening your heart and non-judgment and accepting whatever arises. So that as you become aware of these things, it's not judging what you learn about yourself, not judging what you've become aware of. So the third A is appreciation. So realize the positives in our lives, especially the positives that come from some of those hardwired reactions that come up. Fourth is action. So it's noticing and containing, not suppressing, but containing some of the survival instincts and behaviors that we might have. And then knowing that you can pause and be more conscious of your conduct. You can pause and make a choice about the action you take or you move forward with. And then finally, the 5th A is adherence. And adherence is about sticking to this model of the 5 A's, continuing to remain aware, continuing to practice acceptance and being non-judgmental about what arises in you, continuing to seek out appreciation and gratitude for what it is you do bring to the table. And then, of course, taking conscious action, being conscious of your conduct. So this was actually really more developed as a moment-to-moment model, like a moment-to-moment consciousness and awareness of like, oh, I'm having this reaction, and it's super helpful. It's a super helpful model to be implementing in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment life. And I also realized it works at a higher level too. So as I was saying before, I help clients with self-awareness, and a lot of the clients that I work with are already on a path to awareness, and they want just a deeper level of awareness. But what they really need is acceptance, and that's what I help people do, is gain a level of self-acceptance that's really empowering. And then the appreciation comes, and then we identify the more conscious, purposeful action they can take in the world so that they can show up in the ways that they want to. And that is what leads to growth. So awareness is just the very first step. We then have to move from acceptance to appreciation, and then action and growth. And of course, all along the way, we're adhering to this cycle over and over again. So that is why awareness is a bitch, and it's not enough. You got to get to acceptance. You have to just push back or pull away from that self-judgment that comes up. And when you do that, amazing things happen. And I'll just give you a super quick example. I'm an ENFJ when it comes to the Enneagram. I'm a Myers-Briggs type indicator. I'm an ENFJ. Enneagram, I'm a type 9. I'm a harmonizer. I like to make sure that everybody's okay. I like to blend in a little bit and not put my needs out there too much because I don't want to disrupt other people. I'm also, as an ENFJ, highly structured. I like to have decisions made. I like to come to closure and move on. I like to have a schedule. I like all my little systems. And, throughout my life, through a number of different people and experiences, I didn't always feel valued for that structured part of me. In fact, I felt like it was kind of a bad thing, like I was uptight. And that was some of the not kind of nonverbal communication I got from some people, was this uptightness, or I'd get some light teasing about how structured and organized I am. And I just used to feel bad about it. And I felt like it was something that I should maybe be less of. And what's happened over the past couple of years is that I've encountered people who really appreciate and respect my level of organization and structure and ability to kind of line things up and sequence them. And I realized it's actually what I've always been doing with my coaching clients, this kind of process of helping them understand themselves, come to acceptance, take action, but have that action be in a way that is sequenced and structured so that they can keep it up and maintain it. And so in getting that appreciation from others, I finally saw that appreciation for myself. I finally accepted that part of myself in a much more powerful way than I'd ever had before, and it led to action. And that's why I have this whole new aspect in the past couple of years of my coaching practice, specifically around my Get Your Shit Together program, where I help people develop tools and systems for productivity. Productivity meaning moving the things forward that you want to move forward, not busyness, productivity. And it was because I accepted that part of me, the part of me that is structured and is, does like to have systems in place and does like to sequence and categorize and organize. I really fully accepted that part of me and then took conscious action around moving that part of me forward in a way that felt good and in a way that was valuable to other people. So I encourage you to not only work on your personal awareness, but to also work on your self-acceptance and to find appreciation for some of the hard wiring in you, but then to also take conscious action and be conscious of your conduct so that you can move forward in the way that you really want to, because all of that's action. That leads to action, right? That is where the growth happens, is when you take a step and you try something and you learn and you grow. So that's all for today. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.